Hello everybody, Adrian Plass here.
Yes, and Bridget. Hello.
So, here we are again. And this is number 66.
Yeah, it is.
67.
Can't think of anything
Oh,
significant about 66, but there's been some good things this week. It's been lovely weather in the UK this
well,
week.
it wasn't just, it was blazing hot, wasn't it?
Well, to me that's lovely weather.
At least today. Yeah, I got a bit sick after that. I got a bit,
I know, I
had a
just
bit of
suddenly
heat
remembered.
stroke, so I didn't do too well out of that.
Well, I thought it was lovely, and yeah, we've had an exciting young British tennis player doing incredibly well in the US Open,
US,
so that's another good thing.
She's suddenly gone from having no money to having loads of money, hasn't she? Isn't that amazing?
It is.
But she looks very modest and
she looks fine.
okay, doesn't she? Yeah, really lovely.
But there's been other things as well, haven't there?
Yeah, there have.
Yeah, we've had a funny old week, haven't we? Because for the
Well,
first
very
time,
odd, really.
we did think that we were going to be getting back into more of what we do, really, which was leading a weekend, and COVID reared its ugly, wretched, jolly old head, didn't it? And
Yes,
it was
did.
cancelled.
Yeah, it's really odd when you're. This time we really were ready, weren't we?
We were, but it just, I suppose, just reminds us, every now and then we think, surely we ought to call what we do something else other than sound in the shallows, but we're not really
now.
in a safe place.
No.
It's still going on.
Maybe the Christian life is an eternity of sounding shallows.
I don't know. I mean, we
where
heard
land is.
from someone in New Zealand, didn't we, saying they were
did,
locked down, and somebody in
yeah.
Australia who's been locked down again, and
Someone who's very unsure about whether to vaccinate or not.
That's true as well.
Interesting one.
So all the same problems are still swirling around, and I suppose everybody gets up in the morning and gets on with their day in a way.
Yeah.
You can't just lie there thinking about COVID. Well, Thursday. This is Thursday today, isn't it? And I've been at the church cafe. I've been making sandwiches.
You're a barista, aren't you?
Well, I think I'm mainly a sandwich maker and washer-upper, but I make some coffees, yeah. And you've been doing something much more serious,
Well, I've
really.
been doing something we've already actually looked at in the past, although not for a time, and that's the book of Malachi, which is the last book in the Old Testament. And we often mention that someone once called it malarkey.
Yeah.
Haven't got it wrong. We thought a bit of malarkey at the end of the Old Testament would go down well, wouldn't it? But it's actually a very dramatic and very serious book. I mean, it's and I looked up today to see what Malachi actually means, and I did once look before, but it means messenger or my messenger.
So which comes first with these things, Adrian? I mean,
what do you mean?
well, it's the book of Malachi, and there was a prophet, Malachi.
Yeah.
So was that his name
Oh,
given to
I
him
don't
by his parents,
know, do
which
I?
just happened to mean messenger? Well, I've often wondered about these things.
I'm assuming that it's a prophet who ended up being called Malachi because I'm sure someone's going to correct me, but I don't know. That's what I thought. And we both remember what the message of Malachi is. It's and reading it again, I remembered how very passionate and emotional it is. And it begins, doesn't it, with Israel being whoever's representing Israel, saying God doesn't love them. And
it's a bit of a theme, isn't it?
Oh,
right
it is.
through Exodus and onwards,
it is, all the way through. You've been doing Moses, haven't you,
Yes.
in your notes?
Yeah.
There's a lot of it there. And the reply from God is really, really angry. So what is the problem? Well, one way you can put it is that God doesn't like garage flowers. And for those who live in other countries and the faintest idea we're talking about, can you just say what garage flowers are?
Well, we've never understood, have we, how many of the flowers that you can buy outside a petrol station are the most extraordinary colours. They've all been dipped in these bright sort of primary colours.
Virulently
very
coloured,
lurid.
coloured poster paints. I don't know how they do that. But so when we go out, we don't do it now. But in the old days, when we went out to dinner with somebody,
Yes.
on the way we'd say, "Oh, we haven't got anything to take with us," and we'd go into a garage and buy a bunch of these ludicrously coloured flowers and take them with us. And actually, we were thinking more about us than them.
Oh, yes.
We just wanted to make sure we had.
Yeah.
So
We are not alone in that.
Oh,
I
I'm
know
sure.
we're not.
No,
I
I know.
know that boxes of chocolates
I
and
know.
strange flowers have been bought.
I'd
for
love
the
to know
same
from
reason.
people in other countries whether
But
that
I mean,
happened.
the best present we ever had was a friend of ours, and he'll know who he is if he's listening, who is a church archaeologist and an expert in ancient rocks,
Yeah.
and he brought us a fossil
He did, a
when
big-
he came to
big,
dinner.
very heavy
and I
fossil.
thought that was
yeah.
so amazing. Nothing
Yeah.
garage flowery about
Other
that.
people bring wine. He brings fossils.
Yeah.
So I mean, so it's a little bit the same as that with this, although far more serious. Obviously, God is absolutely furious with Israel, and the reason, as you will remember, is that people were bringing to the altar a sacrifice. They were bringing animals that were blind or lame or diseased and offering them for sacrifice. And he actually mentions uses the word cheat. The cheat who has an acceptable, in other words, a perfect male animal in his flock, and he promises to offer it for sacrifice, and then ends up sacrificing a rotten old animal that's lost one leg or has got a disease that he doesn't care about losing anyway. And God says very dramatically, if only one of you would just shut the temple doors so there won't be any more false fire on my altar. In other words, lock the church up. I'd rather have nothing than have this.
I mean, this is interesting, isn't it? Because you have to think of Jesus and the widow's mite. It isn't to do with how much he got. It's to do with your attitude to it, isn't it? And I, just you saying that, I mean, a couple of things have come to my mind. One is the old-fashioned harvest festivals, where people brought jams and various things and brought them to the altar. And I remember I used to go through the stuff with the people in our church afterwards. And to be absolutely honest, there were some wonderful gifts, but there was a lot of out-of-date cans of beans.
There were things
and
you
some
knew
very
had come from
mouldy
the very back of the larder.
There were,
weren't
and
you?
you knew they'd been there for a
Yeah.
very, very long time.
Yeah.
And the other thing I was remembering was the first time we had a harvest supper in the church that we were in, and there was a discussion about the food, and somebody said, "I know where we can get some very cheap sausages."
That's
and,
right. Yes.
and realised almost
Well, why
immediately.
would you want the very
Why
cheapest?
would you want to
In
give?
fact, she said they're not very nice, but
Yes,
they're
she did.
very cheap.
She did,
Yeah,
and there, without realising it, we can sometimes be saying, can't we? Let's give God something. Let's represent God by giving not a lot, really,
Yeah.
when we could give so much more. And I think good sausages, good coffee, good all these
Yeah.
things, they are very important to us, aren't they?
And that phrase, false fire, as it's translated sometimes, it seems to me to be a sort of metaphor for, I don't know, worship or what looks like enthusiasm, looks or sounds good, but it's actually more noise than substance. And we talked a while ago about the story of the two sons, the one who said he'd go and didn't, and the one who did go, and how perhaps they had a little praise party led by the one who didn't go, and then the other one just went and did it. So false fire, and it's the same with Malachi, Leviticus, with the two sons of Aaron, who created their own fire and really made God angry. It's quite interesting, really. Yeah, but second-rate oddments of time or talents or whatever it is. Yeah.
I mean, the only thing that troubles me in all this, Adrian, is that I don't know. I feel I'm offering a bit of a second-rate whatever at the moment. A lovely friend of ours the other day said, "I feel as though there's a dust over everything." And I know what she means. I feel as though there's a bit of a dust over some aspects of my faith, and so yes, there's falsehood as you say, there's whipping people up and trying to make things. But I think we have to be just a bit careful, because God has always seemed to recognise when actually we're not feeling up to much, really. And we feel we're only giving something second rate.
I'm sure you're absolutely right.
Because that's all we've got. And then maybe you just have to keep going, because that's all you've got. That is the best.
But I think if you look further into this, you can see what's actually happening. And I think it's really important that, I agree with you absolutely. I mean, the more subtle thing is that maybe the more we learn about the real God, as opposed to the bewilderingly variable images that you get from all distorting mirrors of who he is. He actually never had any particular taste for dead animals.
No.
That's not the point. They were symbols that always pointed towards relationship. They always pointed towards getting together. And there's this vivid passion in this book. It's the voice of someone who's really disappointed by what's going on, and behind what sounds like rage, perhaps a deep hurt. He says, you wouldn't treat your governors like this. And I suppose he means that those governors, whoever they are, I don't know who they are more of a reality in their lives than God is. I don't know. And one of the old questions, is God, and I know these aren't easy questions, is God real enough and significant enough to actually make a difference in our lives? And I reckon it's if anyone feels like that, it's better to answer a question like that with an honest no, as you just did, and say,
no,
I'd like to just start again.
I don't think I said that. I think I said that my experience at the moment is that he isn't making any active difference, but a lot of that is to do with what has happened in this last 2 years to so many of us, where you're not sure who you are anymore. You because you were the person who did the things you did, and you could feel you were giving something to God. And a lot of people don't really feel they have got anything to give to God at the moment, because they haven't, all the ways that they did. I mean, it is coming back. It's certainly, there is an expression of love as churches start getting together again, that I think God would love to see the warmth in people's eyes, but and all the other things. But I think we mustn't underestimate how hard this is for ordinary people, of which we have very much two of them.
I think we are always aware of that. We always talk about it.
Okay, so you think I'm just...
No, I don't at all, and I know that's the case. All I'm trying to say is that I think what God is really about is getting back to good relationship.
Oh, yes, I'm
and
sure
wanting
of that.
there to be love between him and those who yearn to get things right and to be with him and to do things for him. And I think some of the rage expressed, I'm not really interested in that. It's the hurt.
He does get jolly angry. I mean, he is very much a parent, isn't he? He gets really angry sometimes.
Yeah. But as we know, there is a rather helpful verse also in this book, which is significant, very helpfully Malachi 3:16, as we know. And what happens is all the people who got told off by God, they get together, and they want to make things right, and they sit down together and they have a discussion. And one of the translations says God received their conversation as prayer. And I know we've often said to people, you don't have to actually pray. If we give the whole conversation to God before we start, he'd be far more interested in that than in siphoning our thoughts and feelings into some reduction or lesser form of what we're feeling and thinking. So I found ever since we read that verse, I found it really, really, really helpful. Because prayer out loud is very hard for some people, and it can dilute what you really want to say.
I think that's
sometimes.
absolutely right, because when you're sitting with somebody and they're talking to you about something, I mean, first of all, they've come to talk to you about it. And that has to be a value, doesn't it?
Of course,
you know, that they have made the decision that somehow they're going to bring whatever it is that they're feeling or thinking or being or doing, or the situation they're in, they're going to come and talk about it. And that means that then we will pray about it. And I think it's a relief to people to think they don't have to get all their facts in order.
No,
and I think it's a relief
no.
to us that we haven't. I remember, you know, I used to listen to people and be almost making a checklist in my mind about the name of the auntie and what exactly had happened and when, so that when we prayed, I would have those facts at my fingertips. It's been a great relief, and I think it is. I think it's a wonderful thing, the idea that we can just talk about things in the presence of God. But I think there is a deliberation in it, that's not what I mean, a deliberateness that we come to do that.
Yeah.
You know, to give God our conversation. That is, in a sense, first fruits, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And as we've said a million times, forgive the hyperbole. But it's never too late to start anything again. The thing, I think, that, like I say, we lose the true image of God till we get to Jesus. The truth of it all is that it is always the right time to sit down together with Him and renew relationship and get it back right again. And He will always say, yes, of course. Of course we want to be like we were before. And only when we do that
can He keep us safe, like David felt being safe in the shadow. I mean, yes, it's always got to be coming back, hasn't it?
Yeah.
But this thing about first fruits has been something that's been very important to God, quite clearly. It's bringing your whole self, isn't it?
Yeah. Absolutely. But
even if you do feel like a manky old sheep.
Well, I know. Well, if that's what you've got and that's what you give,
that's the best you can do.
I know that's fine. Yeah, I'm not bothered about that. But they were talking about animals then. But yeah, that's absolutely right. The other thing I found in Malachi that I'd forgotten was something that always reminded both of us of my mother, because she spent the last 5 years of her life, was it?
I think it was 8, actually.
In a wheelchair.
Yeah.
And she'd always led a very active life in the village. She was always doing stuff and with people.
Yeah, she was amazing, yeah.
And she was a wonderful absorber of other people's things and problems, wasn't she? Not perfect. I think she'd be very annoyed if we said she was, but very good at absorbing people. She
was very non-judgmental. I suppose that's one thing.
So here, this is from the 4th chapter, where it says, "But for you who revere my name, the Sun of Righteousness will rise with healing in its rays out of the wheelchair, and you will go out and frolic like well-fed calves." And we've seen film on television, haven't we, of the cows coming out, and jumping on all 4 legs, springing into the air. And the idea of, we always thought, didn't we, the idea of my mother, after being confined to a wheelchair, to frolic like a well-fed calf on the shining meadows of heaven. And if we can somehow remove ourselves from the excesses of the anger and remember the hurt and the desire to heal with love and to get back together again, those are the really important things, aren't they?
Yeah.
And that's what we hope for everybody. And we know this is a really difficult time. I think this has bashed my spirit on one level as a human being, I think, more than any other time in my in my life, and I certainly need healing, and so do many of the people we know. So we wish the very best to you, all of you, who feel a bit separated, feel a bit bashed, feel a bit wounded.
Yeah, we do. And I know, just on a very positive, I've just been with the food bank, and we're talking about people bringing out their manky old bits of jam and everything, but I am stunned and amazed, Hadrian, by people just bringing the best that they possibly can to give into the food bank or to give to, there's a lot of that about, and I think God does see it and thinks, oh, there's somebody bringing their first fruits.
Yeah, it's a pleasure for him to see, I'm sure. So there we are. Thanks, Malachi, messenger. And we'll see you all next time.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye.